North Carolina in over 20 years, and only the second since 1897. Dan Forrest is a registered architect. He and his wife Alice reside in Raleigh with their 4 children, ages 7 and 19. And after receiving 2 degrees from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, Dan became a leader in the business community, having served as the office president and senior partner of the state's largest architectural firm, Little Diversified Architectural Consulting. Dan remains active in his community and church, and is the founder and former president of the Triangle Leadership Forum. He is also a former member of the Heritage Foundation's President's Club, and previously served on the North Carolina Community Board for the Heritage Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you now our morning keynote speaker, Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest.
Thank you all. It's great to be with you. Can everybody in the back hear me okay? Just long one? Okay, good. Well, first let me just start by saying thanks for inviting me today. This is just a great crowd. It's great to see you. Never, when you get a bunch of college kids together and young adults together, you never know what to expect on a Saturday morning. It's really great to see all of you together. Jay, would you mind grabbing the glass of water? My throat's a little scratchy. I've been talking a lot lately. You know, we can never discount what hard work does in a campaign cycle. I know many of you were involved in a lot of campaigns this last time around, and you know, all I can say is that hard work definitely pays off. And our campaign, if anybody was following Lieutenant Governor's campaign, you'll remember that we only won by about 7,000 votes when it came down to it. At the end, I was about 4.5 million, and so it gives me really the right to say that every vote absolutely counts. And I understand now that there's about 125,000 of you around the country that are participating in this program, and you can imagine what 125,000 people can do to change liberty in America, to fight for liberty in America. If every one of you just reach 100 people, then our election cycle will never be the same again. And so you have great influence and great power on your campuses around the country, and I thank you for making your voice heard, speaking up for the things that you believe in. A couple people I just want to recognize. My daughter Haley's here with me. Haley back in the back in the blue shirt. And always like having her with me. Jamie Falkenberry, who is on my staff as well, back there in the back. Jamie works for me and my director of operations. Joe Furstenberg, as Joe mentioned, he's our intern coordinator. If anybody here is interested in internships for the summer, then see Joe. He's just a fabulous worker and a great young American. And Christian Hine, how are you doing, Christian?
Hey, Dan.
Christian did a lot of work for our campaign in the Charlotte area with the caution group, so thank you for everything you did as well. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
I wanted to just spend a little bit of time updating you on what's going on in Raleigh, and some of the outcomes of what you fought for over this past election cycle. One, as Joe mentioned, we have there's some good things that happened from a milestone perspective. I don't know if you can see that whole screen there or not. Can you guys over there see that at all? Or am I your right? Try to get out of the way a little bit if that helps. As was mentioned, the first time in 25 years we have a Republican governor. The first time in as many years, really, that we've had a Republican lieutenant governor. The second Republican lieutenant governor ever in the history of North Carolina, for all practical purposes, since Reconstruction. First time we've ever had all 3 branches of government go conservative in North Carolina. That's absolutely historical. And somebody mentioned back here, I don't remember who it was, but somebody over here said, we have all 3 branches of government in North Carolina. We don't have any excuses anymore. We better get some things done. We better move this country in the right direction. And I firmly believe that as well. There's a lot of good people up there. A lot of good people doing the right stuff and issuing, submitting bills and passing bills that I think you would agree with. If you come away with nothing else, certainly understanding that there are people there that really are fighting for liberty. You don't get a touchdown every time you pass the ball, and sometimes you just have to keep moving that ball down the field, and I think that's really where we are right now. We're in this process of moving the ball down the field, but we do need to be bold, and we need to be courageous in the way that we move forward. We need to make sure that our voices are being heard. And what we really have on our hands right now in America and in North Carolina is not just a political battle, it's a PR battle. It's making sure that the words we use are the right words. It's making sure that our words are heard correctly. It's making sure that we go out in front of legislation with that PR battle to get our message out. And like never before now, we have an opportunity to do that. It used to be that we just had the mainstream media to get our messaging from. Now, everybody in this room, I doubt that any of you get your news from the mainstream media. you select where you get your news from. That's what I do too. I choose how I get my news and how I filter my news. And I want to make sure I'm getting a cross-section of news. And I'm getting both sides of the story and all sides of the story. I think that's very healthy. But you can now choose where you get it. And so the way it's disseminated then gives us a great opportunity that we haven't had in decades in this country. And so what we inherited when we got there is just an absolute mess. You know, we have the executive team and the legislative team. As I mentioned, the legislative team has been pushing hard for a couple of years in North Carolina and passing legislation. They kind of have their feet on the ground and they know what's going on. But when you win the executive branch for the first time in 25 years and only the second time and the third time in 140 years, you realize that there's a lot of rocks to turn over and find out what's underneath those rocks, and it's not always good stuff. And so government at the executive level in North Carolina is a real mess right now. And what we found was that there are, and oftentimes in many of these agencies, there are no business processes in place at all. And these agencies have been kind of running rogue with their leadership, and no business processes, no contract writing processes in place. So there are junior level staffers writing contracts with people like Microsoft and IBM and Cisco. And I come from the business world, and my job in the business world is to write a contract that benefits me. And so we have lots of contracts. We have thousands and thousands of contracts in North Carolina that don't benefit you, the taxpayer, that don't benefit the people that are really going to be receiving perhaps the benefit of those contracts or not. And so just basic, simple processes. For instance, I'll give you a couple examples. We have a new CIO, Chief Information Officer in the state. His name is Chris Estes. Comes from a business background from Booz Allen, consulting business background. So he comes in, he's trying to figure out what's going on. And the first day on the job, he wants to communicate with his staff. So he's got thousands of employees all over the state. And he realized there was absolutely no mechanism. Again, this is the CIO of technology for the state. He has no mechanism to communicate with his whole team. Well, he says, well, if I can't communicate with everybody across the state, I want to communicate with the people just in my building. A few hundred people in his building. He realizes he has no mechanism to communicate with all the people in his building. There's no listserv there. There is no intranet site. There's no ability for him to get on a phone system and do that. So what he does is he goes down to the security department and says, here we have the intercom here in the building. And they were like, oh, you can't use that. That's for emergencies only. And he said, no, I want to talk to everybody. It's never been used before, as far as anybody knows. Intercom hasn't been used in years. So he gets on the intercom, old-fashioned intercom, the speakers in the building, starts talking to his staff. Well, the next day what happened was the liberal blogs in North Carolina started talking about what an idiot our new CIO is and doesn't even know how to use email to communicate with his staff. He has to use the old-fashioned, antiquated intercom system. And that's really what we're up against. We're up against this battle of people not communicating the truth, not telling the truth about what's really going on. The reality is the system is broken. Another quick example is the Department of Health and Human Services in North Carolina. That is a $20 billion organization. $20 billion with 18,000 employees. The new Secretary of Health and Human Services did the same thing. She wanted to communicate with her employees. She found out there was absolutely no means at all to connect with 6,000 out of 18,000. Which means she doesn't even know what the 6,000 are doing, or where they are, who they are, or anything else. So there's no means to communicate with them. She has no budget director. $20 billion organization, no budget director. She has no CIO. She has no CFO. She has no deputy secretary. Right now, she has no human resources director. This is the largest organization in our state. Your money is being poured into the Department of Health and Human Services at a rapid rate, and there's no business organization in place there. So how do we expect to right-size government, to keep it in check when there's no ability to do that currently? She only has 85 employees that she has full control over to hire and fire. 85 out of 18,000. That means there's almost 18,000 employees out there that even if they were doing nothing, she could do nothing to get rid of them. And so there's all kinds of statutory requirements that have to change in North Carolina that allow these people to run these organizations like this business, to make sure that they're right-sized and to make sure that they're doing the right thing. The other piece was that there's been no follow-up on audits. We have an auditor in our state, Beth Wood. I think she does a great job. She's a Democrat auditor, and there's two forms of audits in North Carolina. One is a process audit, and one's a financial audit. And they've been doing these audits for a number of years. And she took them to our previous governor, and our previous governor did nothing with them. She'd see the audits, the process audits, and go, set them on the table, and nothing happened with them. So we're working very closely now with Auditor Wood to make sure that these processes are being evaluated, doing something about it. One of those audits was, financial audits, was that we found that there was $1.4 billion of waste in DHHS, in Medicaid. And so, you know, we talked about expanding Medicaid in North Carolina, and we're voting against that now in the House and Senate, expanding Medicaid, because we realize that there's $1.4 billion worth of waste and fraud in the system. Why would you expand that system? You know, we need to figure out how to get the system under control before we talk about growing something. And so that's some of the stuff that's going on. Just quickly, I'll just tell you a little bit about lieutenant governors, because some of you come from different states, and most of you here probably have no idea what lieutenant governor does. And that was our first question always on the campaign trail: what does lieutenant governor do? And the second question was, who is lieutenant governor? So I still want to let people know, because as I talk about the rest of the presentation, I'll give you some insight as to why I'm doing what I'm doing here now. Obviously, the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate. That's probably the one thing you do know about. It's kind of like the vice president preside over the Senate, but I actually do preside over the Senate every day. You basically manage the floor activity, manage the debate, make sure parliamentary procedure and rules are being followed on the Senate floor. It's a great opportunity to listen to both sides of the debate and hear what's going on with the bills that come to the floor. You're also second in charge of government. If anything happens to the governor in case of emergency, then the lieutenant governor becomes the governor. It's happened 5 times in our state's history. And so, God forbid it happens, but it could happen again. And so, we take this role very seriously. It seems like, well, that's never going to happen in North Carolina, but if it did and you weren't prepared, then what are you going to do? So we spend a lot of our time, in fact, a significant portion of our time right now is learning all the ins and outs and intricacies of state government, so that if anything did happen, you would be ready and prepared to take over that role. The lieutenant governor is the only position in our state that's both legislative and executive at the same time. So you have a foot on the executive team, and you have a foot on the legislative team, and sometimes that becomes a very difficult and challenging position, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. By Constitution, you sit on the State Board of Education, the Community College Board, and on the Economic Development Board, and you're also a member of Council of State. And Council of State is one of those just strange entities that it comprises the governor, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Commissioners of Agriculture and Labor, the Treasurer, the Auditor, and so forth. There's 10 members, basically 9 plus the governor, but the governor's agenda is what's being introduced at the Council of State meetings. The rest of the folks are there to vote on it. But these meetings go very quickly, and they're 15 to 30-minute long meetings, and we're voting on tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars with the land deals and leases and all this kind of stuff. And you get a package of information maybe a week ahead of the meeting. You have to decipher all this information. This has everything to do with the debt that we create in the state, the debt we take on, and how we organize our state financially. So this is a very important duty that a lot of people just kind of pass over. But as I mentioned, the lieutenant governor is, thank you, Jim. Lieutenant governor is really like, I think this slide may be cut off right there. It's kind of like an island between 2 rivers. You know, you have this, Marco Rubio a moment, hold on a second. You have this island between these 2 rivers. I mentioned you have this one river that's really flowing pretty rapidly, the legislative river. They have their feet on the ground, they know what they're doing, they've been doing it for a while. And to a sense, you know, they're just kind of going, hey, you know, we don't need the executive team because we're just rolling anyway. In North Carolina, for those of you who aren't from here, we have veto-proof majorities in the House and the Senate, so pretty much any legislation can be passed, and any veto could be overridden in our state. But then you have the governor's river, which is moving much more slowly because we have a new governor who's taken over all these agencies, is figuring out what in the world is going on, who is really completely overwhelmed by the just amount of information that has to be gathered every day and deciphered every day, and at the same time all these other things are going on legislatively. So Lieutenant Governor finds himself in this island between these 2 rivers, and you're constantly navigating between playing peacemaker and then trying to get your foot involved in the legislation and push the legislation that's important to you. And so this is a very interesting place to be, and quite frankly, it's kind of quite a fantastic place to be because we can be engaged in both of those worlds. So what's going on now? One of the things I just wanted to encourage you with is that the people that are there, I've had a chance to meet with all the secretaries. These are the secretaries over the agencies that our governors had the opportunity to appoint over the last couple months. And all these people come to Raleigh and come to these positions with a business-minded approach to solving problems. And that's very good because that really is what the need is right now. The need is looking at these agencies and determining how do you make these things run like a business if they really haven't run like a business before in years. So this is pretty important. They've all these folks have made a sacrifice to be here. All of them have made significant financial sacrifices to be here. You know, as was mentioned, I'm an architect. My background is architecture. I was a senior partner in the state's largest architecture firm, and I left that behind to go do this. I made a significant financial sacrifice to do this. So you're not coming in, none of these people are coming in to find a way to make money or to enrich themselves. It's just the opposite. They're making big family sacrifices to be here. Some of these people are working for no money at all. There's 2 people on these secretaries that are working for $1 a year. And so they're doing it for the right reasons, and that's good. They're coming with a common sense and a customer service approach to government. Both the governor and I talked about this for quite a while on the campaign trail. You know, we are here to work for you. We are here to be your servants, not the other way around. You're not here to serve us. We're in this job for as long as you decide we should be here to serve you. So that's what public service is. There's a big difference between a politician and a public servant. A politician will work to advance his own career. A public servant will work on your behalf and make sure that they're doing what they believe is best on your behalf. And so turning government into this customer service mindset is a very difficult, challenging thing to do because you have a bureaucracy that's been around for a long time that is really just the opposite. So what you're trying to do is change a culture. You're trying to change a mindset and change a culture. And that's going to take some time. That doesn't happen overnight. For instance, you may have heard about the D&D issue with the toll road in Raleigh where people were being double charged for their tolls. Well, that had nothing to do with this administration or these secretaries or Secretary Tata. But what they did was they got onto the phone and they called every single person that got double charged and said, I'm sorry we made this mistake, and we fixed it and make sure that this won't happen again. And so that's the kind of service that you're going to see coming out of this government. People are starting to understand that. And what we're doing now, there's a couple things going on. One is, as I mentioned, there's really this discovery phase that's going on at the executive level. It's really about the agencies and the business practices and the contracts and the budget. The budget has to be submitted here in a couple months. And so you're talking about figuring out what's going on in all the agencies and at the same time trying to put together a solid budget for our state. And then you have the legislative side that's working on a health care exchange issue where we've said no to the state exchange in North Carolina. We said, if the federal government and President Obama are going to come and say this is a good thing for the state, then they shouldn't be saying, well, by the way, we're going to pull out in a few years and you're going to be left holding the bag on all this. So this was the best decision we made, was to pull out of the state exchange and say no, let the federal government figure out how to do it if they think they can do it. Unemployment insurance was another one. Unemployment insurance needed to be drastically overhauled. This is one of those things you can stand on one side of the issue and go, oh, how your heartstrings are being tugged at about what's going on with unemployment. There's people that are hurting out there, and there are people struggling, and there's no doubt about that. Our unemployment is the 4th highest unemployment rate in the nation in North Carolina, somewhere around 9 to 10% unemployment, and that's only the U3 number. Are you all familiar with U3 and U6 unemployment? There's some head shaking out there. U6 unemployment is the real number. Over the years, unemployment has been dumbed down by every president since John F. Kennedy to make the numbers look better than they really are. And basically, U6 unemployment includes everything. It's all the people that have fallen off the doles of unemployment, so to speak. So when you see unemployment numbers, those are people that are just on unemployment. There are people that come off of unemployment and are not on those doles anymore, and so they're not on the list. And so you don't see their names, but they're still out of work. There are some military personnel that are not on that list, but they're still out of work. There are people that have just given up hope. They've just kind of dropped out of the job market, and they're not on the list. So when you take that and you combine it with all the people that choose to be off of the list, I mean, there's mothers raising their families, there's fathers raising their families, there's college students that choose to be in college at the working age. Working age for unemployment is 16 and above, and so you take all these factors and you realize it's a very small portion of people that are working in America to provide for all these people that aren't working in America. And that's very unsustainable. The demographics do not work in America. I know you all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But the demographics do not work. By the time every one of you graduate and you start paying taxes, some of you already are paying taxes. Those of you that are already paying over $1 million, you will be paying over $1 million for unfunded liabilities. I don't know about you. I don't have $1 million to pay for unfunded liabilities. You probably don't either. You probably don't want to pay for somebody else's unfunded liabilities. And so we have this great challenge that we're facing about the future of our country, what's it going to look like. If we don't deal with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and all the other unfunded liabilities and welfare types of issues, then this country will go broke. I mean, it already is broke. You know, the only difference between us being broke and not is the fact that we can print money. That's the only difference. And we can borrow vast amounts of money from the Chinese government and other governments around the world. And so you look at the numbers and you realize, again, that this is not sustainable. Every dollar that we bring in right now from revenue, from taxes, into our country, into our government, goes to pay for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It goes to pay for those every single dollar. So everything else that we do in America right now, everything else we spend money on is borrowed money. So again, your futures rely on how we deal with this debt issue, and how we deal with this unfunded liability issue. This is a liberty issue. This is an individualism issue versus a collectivism issue. These are the issues that we're battling, that your generation is truly going to pay the price for. So boards and commissions, we're getting rid of things that are just unneeded and unnecessary boards and commissions in our states. School choice will be an issue that's coming up. There will be a lot of school choice types of legislation going on. You know, you have to break the state government control of monopoly on education if you want to get innovation. Innovation will change the face of education. And innovation is the opposite of bureaucracy, right? I mean, it really is. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. And we've been working on a 20th century, an early 20th century education model for years. Many of you are sitting here with devices in front of you, whether it's a laptop or a phone or an iPad or what have you. And those devices in and of themselves are changing education and changing the way that education is being delivered. I'll talk about that just in a minute. You know, photo voter ID is an absolute game changer in North Carolina, and people know this, and that's why there's such a strong fight from the other side against photo voter ID. But this bill will come to the floor, and this bill will be passed this year, along with a lot of other election issues. You can clap for that one, because that one really is, that is a big deal. If you don't believe it, we need to protect the fair and free election system that we have. Tax reform's coming to the table. I'm a firm believer that we need to eliminate the personal and the corporate income tax in North Carolina. We may not do this all in one big touchdown. This may take some time, and I'm okay with that, as long as we set a course of action and we set a plan in place. If it takes a couple of years to get there, I'm okay, but let's move in that direction. And let's make sure that we're opening up markets like other states have done. The states that don't have these income taxes are the states that are the strongest economically in our country right now. And so that's something that we need to do. Regulatory reform is continuing to go on. We did introduce a new career-ready track for high school students that were graduating. To say you have these two tracks you go on. You go on the college track. It says you want to get a 4-year degree from a college, or you can get a diploma on a career-ready track that takes you through vocational training and gets you certified and allows you to go out and get a job. And so that's in communication in conjunction with our community colleges around the state, which we have a fantastic community college system here in North Carolina that is training people for real jobs out there. So that's already going on. So what am I working on? Based on the things that we really have responsibility for. You know, Lieutenant Governor is one of those weird positions that has no power. We have no power whatsoever. It's kind of weird for a politician to say we have no power. We have no power, but we have lots of influence. And I think influence is equally as important. I'm okay having no power. That gives me the opportunity to reach out across both sides of the aisle, to reach out to people with very differing political views. Maybe they don't feel threatened by me or the power that I may bring to the table. But we can sit down and have a dialogue. We can sit down and debate. I know you guys love to debate. I've debated most of you in the room probably at some point during my campaign, and that's awesome. And that's really what America's about. So we come with this ability to have interaction across all political parties and political spectrum. So we don't have any power, but we have influence. I'm going to use that influence in the best way I can as Lieutenant Governor. One of those is education. So I mentioned school choice. As Lieutenant Governor, I'm the chair of the E-Learning Commission. And so I'm really going to work very hard. I've already met with all the organizations that are focused on e-learning in our state to open up a real virtual school in North Carolina to make sure that virtual school spans K-12, community college, and the university system. There's no reason in the 21st century where we are today that our students shouldn't be able to learn from the best and the brightest professors around the world in real time, anywhere they are, and to do that for very low cost or free. I'm sure you're all familiar with Khan Academy. Khan Academy has some great teaching out there, and it's all free. It's all just sitting out there, and we don't even utilize that in North Carolina right now. we're not able to utilize that in our state for a number of reasons. And so we need to change that and break down some of those barriers that are stifling education in the state. So that's one of our big focuses. Another one is the economy and international trade. There are barriers to trade right now. We do make things in North Carolina. And advanced manufacturing is growing in North Carolina at a rapid rate. And these are really cool jobs. We have an apprenticeship program in North Carolina that probably none of you have ever heard of before, because most businesses in our state don't even know about our apprenticeship program. But this apprenticeship program takes high school students in the 10th and 11th grade, allows them to have internships through the summer, and then lets them decide, both equally decide, is this right? Is this the right job for them? And then it trains them, sends them to community college, it gives them their community college degree, it gives them a journeyman certificate, and then it gives them a job. So they come through high school, through community college with a job, sometimes making $60,000, $70,000 a year working in advanced manufacturing, and no debt. And no debt. So how many of you can say you're going to come out with a 4-year degree with no debt? I know my son's at Chapel Hill, he's a sophomore at Chapel Hill. He's going to come out with potentially significant amounts of debt. He's got to work it off, as many of you do, have jobs and multiple jobs to work off the debt that you're accruing. So we need to make sure that college is becoming less expensive over time, not more expensive. And it's really, Chapel Hill is a great value for universities in our country at $20,000 a year. But if you come out with $80,000 a year or $80,000 of debt after 4 years, not a great value. There's a move in the country to offer these $10,000 degrees. Have you seen that? Have you heard about that? Universities across the country are working on $10,000 all-inclusive package degrees, so you don't have to go, when you go to Chapel Hill or NC State and buy the full package. You don't have to buy everything that they have to offer. If you're not a football fan, you don't have to pay that student for football tickets and basketball tickets, and you don't have to pay for the rock climbing wall, and you don't have to pay for the, whatever it happens to be. You can get it's a kind of an a la carte package. And that's really where we should go in this country. We should allow you to decide what kind of education you want to get and how you want to get it, not the universities, not the government telling you how you have to be educated to get there. So I think that'll be important. So education is a big push for me. As I mentioned, the economy, just working with other nations to bring other nations to our country and say, here are the products that we have in North Carolina that are available to you. We need to open up the markets for trade, open up the free market, allow that to flow in our country, allow us to not just make more products here, but to be able to export more products. That's a key in this world today. And then branding. Our state motto is S.A. Branded here. You've probably seen that on our state seal before. If you're from North Carolina, it means to be rather than to see. To be rather than to see. And in this world that we live in, so many people are out there trying to seem like there's something they're not. There are complete states and governments. We have a president that really is trying to seem like he is something that he is not right now. You're probably following sequestration. And if you're following that and you're paying attention to the news about sequestration, you'll know that the president says every single opportunity he has, this was the Republican House's idea. This was their idea. Well, we happen to know for a fact that on July 27, 2011 at 2:37 p.m., the president came up with this idea. And he sold it to the White House, and they sold it to the Congress, and they said that's the only way this is going to work, is sequestration. And now he's going around telling everybody that that's not his idea. He didn't have anything to do with it. And if we have to lay off 800,000 military personnel now, it's going to be the Republicans' fault in Congress. That's a lie. That's a flat-out lie. And so we need to make sure we're telling the truth. We need to make sure we're transparent in everything we do. And we need to make sure that we are who we say we are. So branding our state. Who is North Carolina going to be? What are we going to stand for? I think we can be number one in education. Why not say, let's be number one in education in the world? If we're going to do this in the business world, I would say, here's the plan that we're going to put in place. What does number one mean? We get to find out ourselves. And we put a plan in place to move forward and be number one in the world in education. Number one in employment. Why would we not say we want to be number one in the world in employment? Or number one in America in employment. Not number 46. We want to be number one. Set a plan in place to be number one. Number one in energy in America. Why would we not set a plan to be number one? We have great resources here in our state. We need to utilize those resources. Number one in efficiency and transparency. Knowing that every single dime that you send to Raleigh is going and how it's being spent. If you want to have real accountability in government, open up the books to everybody so they can see every single dime. And as soon as you do that, this country will change. If you can go out and click on a button, go out on the internet and find out where every dime that you're sending to the government is being spent, you're going to see people's feet held to the fire about how they're spending money. So that really does need to happen. So those are some things we need to. Oh, back on that last slide, I just said employee morale up there. And one of the things that I'm doing it every other week now, is I'm going to a different agency or a different department. I'm walking the halls, and I'm going into their cubicles or offices of every employee in that building, and I'm saying, thank you for what you do. I just want to say thank you for being a public servant. Thank you for the work you do for North Carolina. Thank you for the job. And the first time we did this at ITS, I walked into a couple offices, and people were literally crying. There was one grown man that had been there for 35 years. He said, nobody in state government has ever thanked me for the job that I do. I say, you know what? Why do you think employee morale is so bad in state government? Nobody has ever thanked this man 35 years for the job that he's done. That's pretty bad. Now, you know, we have to make sure that we're rewarding people that do a great job, that we're giving those people opportunities to raise the flag when something's not working right, and they are empowered to make change themselves, because that doesn't happen in government. We need to make sure we're getting rid of these kind of 10-year laws that we have within state government. We think just because you've been there for longevity, you're going to be there forever and not do anything. Those things have to change. But we have to change the morale of the state government as well. And some of that just starts by thank you. And we also obviously need to remember where we came from. And obviously the Constitution is the bedrock of our society. And our founding fathers certainly believed that a frequent recurrence of fundamental principles is absolutely critical to the posterity of our state and our nation. And you know, this document is just as good today as the day it was written. It's obviously been amended, and it's gone through the right legal process to do that. But to act like this is a living organism document is very fatal to our nation. And we need to make sure that we stand on our fundamental principles, we believe in our fundamental principles, and I know that you all do that. And that stands for protecting our First Amendment rights. You should be more scared about your First Amendment rights really than any other rights, except maybe Second Amendment rights. Second Amendment rights are equally as important. If you don't have the Second Amendment, you probably don't have the First Amendment anymore. And obviously the 10th Amendment still exists too. You know, as a state, we need to make sure that our sovereign rights and our sovereign powers are protected as a state. And federal government mandates of any kind coming from a president or a Congress that don't align with the Constitution, don't align with our laws, should not be allowed. And that's why we have checks and balances in government. And that's why, really, it's up to you what you're doing here to hold the politicians' feet to the fire. When you elect somebody to go to Washington, and then you have a president run rogue, then you have to realize that somebody's not doing their job. In fact, it's two branches of government that are doing their job, not just one. And that's why there's such a big libertarian movement in America right now. It's because not only the Democrats not doing their job, the Republicans haven't been doing their job historically either. You know, we have these massive debts in our nation and massive unfunded liabilities in our nation, not because of one party, but because of two. And because of people not being held accountable for what they've been doing. So I believe that we can save America, and I believe that we are going to do it one state at a time. No matter what state you come from, you have the ability to change America and save America. And as the gentleman said in the back, this is not the same America that I grew up with. It's certainly not the same America that I grew up with either. But the scary part of that is how rapidly that is actually changing. I mean, how right before our eyes, there are things happening today that 10 years ago we would not even have dreamed of happening. Wouldn't even imagine it. 30 years ago would have been unheard of and unspeakable, some of the things that are going on right now in our country. And so we can save America, but we're going to do it right here. With the work that you're doing on your college campuses, you have a massive uphill battle. And I know you know this. Everything on those college campuses, depending on which college you go to, some are better than others, but everything on those college campuses. How many are from Chapel Hill? Okay. Case in point, Chapel Hill. My son goes there. And I love Chapel Hill. But talk about indoctrination, liberal indoctrination at every level. Your ability to stand up and make your voice heard within the classroom, and to do that boldly and courageously, and then to do it amongst your other students. My son comes home every day with stories about who he's debating and how they're debating things and issues and how people get angry and just walk away. When I know you all know this routine, but keep doing it. You absolutely have to keep doing this, and that's how we're going to change America. And you need to think for yourself. And I know that everybody in this room knows how to think for themselves, or you wouldn't be here. A million other things that you could be doing. This is not no personal computers. This is no political correctness. We need to throw political correctness out the window. This nation was founded on the ability for us as individuals to be able to use our individual voice, to be able to come around the table and to be able to speak on whatever issue is important to us. And that's how America was founded, and that's how America will be changed again. The liberal left will change words on you every day. Words are being defined by them every day in order to put you in a box, in order to say, these are the things you can talk about over here, and these are the things you can't talk about over here. And if you talk about these things over here, you're going to be demonized. Well, you know what? You've got to throw all that out the window, because your absolute future, your liberty, depends on this, on denying political correctness and standing up for what you believe and making your voice heard. Now you have to do that in a reasonable way as well. I mean, I think it's important. We do have a system in America, and there are ways to work within that system. There are ways and times to circumvent that system, but you have to do it wisely. You have to make sure that you're being respectful for one in the conversation. I believe it's not just enough to have facts on your side anymore. We do have facts and we have truth and so forth on our side. It's not just enough to do that anymore. We have to make sure that the message we're getting out there and the way we're getting it out there is effective. And so I hope that you will continue to fight for that. And for me, I believe that we need to remember that we answer to a higher power. This nation was founded on a different worldview than we see today. And many of you in this room are probably battling that every day on your college campuses. I don't know what you believe. Some of you may be secular humanists. I'm Christian, and I believe that this nation was founded upon a biblical worldview construct. And so I will fight for this biblical worldview construct. You may fight for what you believe in, but our founding fathers definitely believed in this when they wrote the Constitution. They believed in this when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution that you all fight for. They believed in this when they wrote the North Carolina Constitution. And our preamble of the Constitution reads like this: "We, the people of the state of North Carolina, grateful to Almighty God, the sovereign ruler of nations, for the preservation of the American Union and the existence of our civil, political, and religious liberties, and acknowledging our dependence upon Him for the continuance of those blessings to us and to our posterity due, for the more certain security thereof, and for the better government of this state, ordain and establish this Constitution." They relied on a higher power. They knew that they answered to God. They did not just answer to themselves as individuals. And that's important to know as you move forward. So these are the things that I will leave you with. These are the things that I'll challenge you with. And I really am out of time, but I know that you guys have lots of questions. So I will answer a couple, but I have to run, so I won't too long here. Yeah.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor. Glenn Bradley, speaking about avoiding political correctness, one of the problems that we have dealing with 10th Amendment legislation, or the willingness to stand up against the federal government in North Carolina, is we have members in our own party and leadership that insist that we cannot do this, that this is unconstitutional, which obviously Article 6 in the 10th Amendment is still in the U.S. Constitution, or that this issue was decided in the Civil War. Are you, sir, how do you plan on using your influence, since you obviously believe in the 10th Amendment and state sovereignty, to help move this agenda along? We're the only state in the region that has yet to pass the 10th Amendment bill.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't, Glenn, it's a great question, but I have not heard any inkling out of either side, the House or the Senate, that a 10th Amendment bill is going to come to the floor.
They've told them not to introduce them.
Well, and that's the issue. That is certainly a leadership issue. When you're in charge and the leadership sets up the committees and the leadership determines what goes to those committees and what is heard in those committees and so forth, the members have the right to stand up and be loud and vocal about those types of things. They can do that. And there may be some members that do that. And part of that is putting pressure on the leadership to say this is important for our state or this is not important for our state. But the leadership does make the call of what goes to the committees and what does not go to the committee. So as of now, Glenn, I haven't heard of any bill that's coming onto the floor from a 10th Amendment perspective. There are some states that have done that related to health care, for instance. So you've seen states that have had nullification bills that have come up related to health care. In the general term, I think nullification as a term can become a slippery slope, because then it includes absolutely everything. You say, well, what do we decide we want to do versus what does the federal government decide they want to do, and it becomes this nasty internal battle. But we do know that very clearly there are things that are spelled out in our federal constitution. There are things that are spelled out in our state constitution. So it's up to us. I would say that you can't point. You can never point to your elected officials and say, what are you going to do about this? I think that is a wrong move. And when anybody, there's a lot of passionate people out there. all over the place. And, you know, I get blasted on Facebook all the time and get called a traitor for one thing or another. You don't even know what you're talking about half the time. But I know who I am. I've said the same thing for 2 years on the campaign trail. I've never nuanced my message. Christian, have you ever heard me change my message? Not one time. So I am who I am. And, but you know what? It's up to you to change this country. If something's really important to you, any issue like that's important to you, then go en masse down to the legislature, down to the General Assembly, walk in their offices because all the doors are open all day long, and lobby for the things that are important to you. Take drafts of bills down there that are important to you. You know, standing outside and protesting on the mall, the members don't care. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. They're just going to avoid you. If they don't believe in that issue, they're going to avoid you. But if you walk in their office, and hundreds of you walk in their office, or thousands of you walk into their office, then they're going to start to pay attention. You light up their phones, you light up their emails, then they're going to pay attention. It's up to you to change America. Our Constitution is very unique in one way from the rest of the world. It doesn't start with we the government. It starts with we the people. And that means that you are the government. And you have the responsibility of the government as well. So don't just rely on the people you elect to do the things that you think are important. Make your voice heard and go down and do something about it. Hey, I'll take one more question. I know, Jamie, I got to go. I'm late. Yes, sir.
So the recommendation that you just gave made me think about how a few days ago Representative Skip Stam made several comments that strongly suggest the House committee gave an unfavorable recommendation to a medical marijuana bill because they were tired of getting so many phone calls and so many emails and so many people coming to their offices in support of the bill. So I guess I'm curious if in your position you have any capacity, even just by talking to them, to address that, because it was very unsettling to me to read that so many people supported the bill.
I have not heard of that, so that surprises me too.
Okay.
Listen, I think from a libertarian perspective, I think the focus on pot and medical marijuana, I think it's misguided. I know exactly what it is. I know where it's coming from. Y'all can boo me if you want to, but we have massive issues here. Absolutely massive issues that are going to destroy this nation. Medical marijuana is not one of them. And so you can fight for that, you can lift it up, and you can spend all your time dealing with that. But I'm telling you, the outside will look and go, oh, those crazy college kids, they're just experimenting with pot, and I know probably most of you in this room never have, and probably never will. But that's beside the point. There are massive issues. There are issues like the debt of this nation. There are issues, and I see some grimaces on your face. They don't agree with me. A lot of them don't agree with me. But listen, I think there's bigger things to fight for in this nation. So if I was going to spend my time going down and lobbying in Raleigh, I wouldn't spend my time lobbying for marijuana. I'm not saying it's not a good issue. I'm not saying that it's not a valid issue. That's just not what I fight for, because there are some huge things to fight for out there. So anyway, thank you for your time. Thanks for inviting me.